King of Podcasts proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts. Podcasting from my fortified bunker in South Florida, USA, another Broadcasters Podcast is on your player, wherever you listen to it, confined somewhere during this time of COVID-19 and the coronavirus. We are here once again, and I hope all of you maybe have a little token appreciation for yours truly for bearing through and just having to keep myself busy and preoccupied because I have to do podcasts. I have to do something just to get myself planning, preparing, and recording and producing podcasts. And I've been doing it so much now, it's like in 9 days I've been confined. I'll tell you, man, I can't, even I amaze myself how much content I can put together. And it's not just content I just want to put together just because I need something to do. I mean, it's really good content. I mean, the good thing is things are still going on that are pertinent to everything. Even though we are kind of isolated from everything, at least there's stuff going on that we know about, and I can keep you informed. So the Broadcasters Podcast still has relevance in this time, which is very important because God forbid I don't have that. I said the same thing about my Wrestling is Real podcast, because if wrestling wasn't going on like it was now, I don't know what I would do with myself, because that would be kind of sucking. Like, I mean, it's one of those guilty pleasures. I'm sure some of you all have guilty pleasures that you have as well, whether you're just watching certain TV shows, binge watching, whatever it might be, video games, some of you, who knows what you have. But a lot of you have something that will keep you preoccupied. You can only go through Netflix and chill for so long. And trying to find other things that keep you busy, hobbies. This was always kind of a bit of a hobby, but always an extended part of a hobby because I did have more to do with it. But here's the deal. I might have stuff I would normally watch right now, but I'm not necessarily inclined to watching television. I can only watch so much YouTube per day that's of original content I want to watch. And then other than that, I'm not going to go back and start watching reruns, or I'm not going to start getting into a show where I feel like I have to sit there and do nothing but watch. I want to have something else to do. So I feel like I need to be overly productive, and that's where I have to be. I can't just sit down and watch TV and do nothing. It's kind of hard for me to do that. That's what the movies are always for. At some point, I'm going to have to do that and actually sit down and watch a movie, enjoy it like I would like a theater, and something like that. See if I can make it work. But I've also been trying out some live programming. I'm trying to feel the things just to keep myself preoccupied. The other thing, too, is that I'll just do these two podcasts, okay? Besides the Broadcasters Podcast, besides the Wrestling is Real podcast, I have when I'm not podcasting. And that's an umbrella of different things I want to talk about. I have a few things I still have slated to go and put up when it comes to dating, when it comes to Uber and Lyft, the rideshare economy, when it comes to social culture, things like that. I like a lot of things I want to go and bring up that I will not bring up on the show. So that's the whole idea of that. And I do that for the other shows. And I put it up on video on YouTube, which, by the way, all the episodes of this program and the others are all on YouTube. I put it all up there. YouTube.com/JBrasco951. JBRASCO951. Or just search King of Podcasts on YouTube. Or just look for the link on any of the websites. Broadcasterspodcast.com, kingofpodcasts.com, or wrestlingisreal.com. It's all there. And I have to make some changes to the website, but unfortunately I'm not the webmaster that can change the hosting around. I'm hoping to get that done soon. And so what I want to do is kingofpodcasts.com becomes the portfolio page. Then I have wrestlingisreal.com. You know where that goes. And I have broadcasterspodcast.com, which I'm just redirecting, but I want it going straight to the page so that more people can find it. Things like that. But the content's rocking and rolling. I'm cranking out daily content at this point. It's incredible. And I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to start recording content and start scheduling it ahead for when I'm not podcasting. The YouTube content, I'm actually going to start booking ahead if I have to do that. Just to have something else to continue to keep flowing in the content for now, because I think more than anything else, if you're a podcaster out there, or if you're just one of those people that just need to keep yourself engaged, then do that. Now, I have some good news. that I want to give because of the fact that, I think some of you actually enjoy the interview series that I do on a regular basis. Well, I put on another pitch for interviews and I got back a whole bunch of guests. So I might be able to book the next 10 to 12 weeks of interviews, which will get split up, of course. I'll probably have like 6-7 interviews lined up, and I will get them done all the way down the line until until this whole thing's over, I guess. We'll figure it out together. Now, one interview I did do because, again, I'm finding things to do. And when I record on a Saturday, maybe at night, but not during the day. But I did. And so I reached out to somebody that I personally know, that I've known in the space here. And he's, made his way up a lot in the last 4 or 5 years that I've met him. His name is Jared Easley. And Jared is co-founder and head of community and content of the Podcast Movement Conference, which maybe you've seen it. It's the world's largest international podcasting only conference. And he does a lot of work. He's a motivator. He's a friend. He's a power content creator. Also calls himself the Zig Ziglar, or he's been called the Zig Ziglar of the podcasting world. So I'm going to interview him on this week's show. You'll hear the first part, which I did a little over an hour, and you're going to hear about a good 40 minutes of that tonight on the program. Then I'll have part 2 next week. But we go through a lot of different topics. But again, it's the podcasting community, and we definitely do come in with the idea of, really taking this time to really create great content. Because that's what I'm doing right now. And I think for many people out there, it is nice where some people try to engage in other channels to do content. So like people are now rediscovering Periscope or DLive or, getting back on YouTube again or, doing more tweeting, more Facebook, more Instagrams. Who knows? Because people have time for it. And we all want to communicate. We all want to do our things to market ourselves and push our brands. So that's what I'm doing. At this time, I have a whole lot to work on. And I'll tell you, for my full-time work, I have been ramping up content left and right. There's just so much I'm putting together, trying to book all these different shows that I have to go and schedule, book, and prep. If I can get them 12 weeks ahead, I'd be successful in what I was trying to do. So doing a lot of work like that, and most importantly, taking advantage of everybody having downtime, because everybody has downtime to do all this kind of stuff. So there's not many excuses you could say, well, I'm traveling, I'm doing this and that, I got to go to this place. No, you're not. You're home. So take advantage of it. If you want to do content, start a podcast. Try it. See what it does for you. And then stick with it. Honestly, this is something where I'm now, 2 years, 3 months into this show. I've done my other show for 7.5 years. Yeah, it'll be 8 coming up in December. And I've been enjoying it, man. It's fun and it's great to do. And the most important thing is in this digital age, people can still do content. And that's what's most important. Everybody's finding ways to continue to work around. But I want to go and get into the meat of the matter. What this week's show is going to talk about off the top. Got to give some credit to Netflix. Digital streaming obviously has a chance to really take advantage of this situation. And, what they are going to be able to try to do, I would think, is trying to create the narrative where this new normal that we're going into right now, streaming media is going to become something much more commonplace. I think what's going to happen is the cord cutting we were getting before. Now, the cord cutting might stop because you got to ask yourself, the disruption is getting disrupted by the coronavirus. I think the pandemic really puts a stop on the constant cord cutting because people are now rediscovering cable and network TV again. Now, that could go away after a while. They could all go away. That could very well be true. But I think for some people, you have to really consider, at least you're giving it something to do. Like, people are trying to go ahead and, they're trying to find content to keep them preoccupied. So they're going to all different levels. You're going back to traditional mediums to do that. But by all means, please do not watch network and cable news. Do not do it. Really, it's not helping at all. I think people just need to go and get themselves off of that altogether. So there we go. Just got to think about that too, okay? So let's go into the actual movie environment and talk about all the things that are going on with that. I think that's very important to start off with as well. And really just talk about what is Netflix going to be getting, because they're taking advantage and they're also leveraging in goodwill for all that they're doing. So I can't really complain much about that for them much. I think it's a good thing that they're doing that. I can appreciate that. So there's a whole lot of stories I got to get into, but I'm going to go and start off first with Netflix and talk about some of the things that they're doing for the good of their platform and for those out there. They have set up a $100 million fund to help people in the TV and film industry who have lost work because of the coronavirus outbreak. And that's a fantastic story. From page6.com, Ted Sarandos, the chief content officer, said that most of the fund will go towards support for the hardest hit workers on our own productions around the world. And $15 million will go towards third parties and nonprofits providing emergency relief to out-of-work crew and cast in the countries where we have a large production base. Just like that. Pretty nice to see them do that. I got to give them that. A lot of donations coming up as well. Ralph Lauren has actually just donated $10 million to coronavirus relief efforts. Selena Gomez is donating proceeds from her Dance Again merchandise for COVID-19 relief. I'm hearing now, there's now a concert series that's being put together. And I forget where it's going to be put on. I think iHeartRadio is putting it together to do a benefit concert. I know Elton John's already part about that as we speak, I believe. The other story that I saw, which was quite interesting, is that Netflix is also paying talent guarantees as Hollywood starts to address fallout from the coronavirus-related shutdown. This is from Deadline.com a couple days ago. So again, like I said, Netflix is paying cast members affected by the shutdown, and it's being told that actors on series which were filming or about to go into production at the time everything was put on hold are receiving their minimum guarantees. Episodic fees for the minimum number of episodes each cast member is guaranteed on a show each season per their contract. And the initial wave includes about a dozen series, which had been immediately impacted, with the list expected to grow as more shows don't go into scheduled shoots during the pandemic. SAG-AFTRA, the actors union, has been in the loop and aware of Netflix's actions. TV studios are hammering out their policies right now, expecting to start paying their actors on affected projects by next week. And as most broadcast series were either wrapped or very close to wrapping because of the timing of the shutdown, minimum guarantees largely met. Broadcast-centric studios are paying talent cast and pilots which have not been produced. And in order for studios and networks to be able to hold on to talent as backup scripts are being written for pilots, they have to pay them at least a minimum. Ongoing negotiations, according to this report, with actors and their reps on the size of the fees also include possible extensions of the cast options for at least some or the pilots, and traditionally expire at the end of June. The worst is yet to come in the U.S. Hollywood production may not resume before July at the earliest. Now, let's move along here. In terms of the movies out there, Warner Brothers is now addressing some of their movie releases. Wonder Woman 1984 is still going on, but now they've pushed back the launch to August. There's 3 movies that they have: In the Heights, Scoob, and Malignant are now undated. So Wonder Woman was never going to streaming despite the reports out there. And the fact that the movie's still going to go theatrical, it's moving from June 5th to August 14th. So, yes, they're not going to go ahead and take a DC movie, which is going to make big bank, possibly $1 billion worldwide if it can make it happen. They don't want to go ahead and let that happen. They can definitely hold off. And I think that's fine. I think it's not a bad idea for them to go ahead and wait that long. I think by August, we might be able to go ahead and see this movie for all of us out there. Trolls World Tour, a DreamWorks animation movie, which is really interesting, would have made a whole lot of bank worldwide in theaters if they would have pushed back, but they decided to push it out on April 10th on all homes, as many believe it's an experiment on behalf of Comcast. So the idea is, and like I said, the idea that we were going to go and pay $20 for a 48-hour rental, it's not anything that I would do right now. I don't care if it is a new release. I'm going to watch it in a theater. That's where I want to see it, on a big screen. Drive-ins still continue to post best ticket sales in the weekend box office, wiped out by theater closures. It's another thing you keep hearing about. The James Wan movie Malignant will now shift off August 14th and will now become an undated movie. And the Broadway musical In the Heights is moving off June 26th to a to-be-determined date. Scoob is no longer going in May 15th and will be a future release. At the moment, Christopher Nolan's Tenet feature, which is starring John David Washington, is still scheduled to stay on board for July 17th in anticipation the global theatrical marketplace will be well by then. So there you go. You got more of that to go and work into, which is interesting. A couple things more to go and talk about here. Other movies that are stuck in limbo right now, and then we'll get into what's going on in China when it comes to the box office, because it did reopen as of our last recording. So there are still big movies that are stuck in limbo as start dates remain uncertain from Variety. So from Matrix 4 to Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, production has been halted to a standstill, leaving many of the teams behind the biggest blockbusters certain when they're going to be able to call action again. Sources tell Variety that most studios are letting talent and the reps know that at this point they do not expect these stalled productions to get back underway until mid-May at the earliest. The pandemic is not expected to reach its apex of major production hubs until the end of April. And this is really what we're going to have to worry about. This is when the news comes into play. We have to wait and see what happens basically the end of April when this first good wave, the initial wave of this pandemic really reaches New York City, which is now the most affected city in the whole country. We have to hope and pray that New York City goes okay. And again, I want to take a moment to go ahead and give major kudos, thoughts, prayers, wishes, and thanks of much gratitude to all first responders, all medical professionals, anybody working in a hospital, anybody that has to go and deal with responding to this crisis. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing all that you do. I'm so thankful for all of you. And at some point, I will go ahead and put out some place that, I think I'm going to consider going and donating towards the cause. I think that's going to be coming up pretty soon. At the moment, people are just being affected as of recording today. There were a lot of people in the gig economy and many people in the economy in general in the U.S. 3.8, million unemployed as of today? Let me just double check and make sure that stat so I'm not getting that wrong. 3.28 million. And looking at the stats right now of where it's all at, we're looking at the moment 186.8 thousand in California. And I can imagine a lot of people from the sets are all getting affected by this. New York City, 80.3 thousand, 74,000 from Florida, 155,000 from Texas. But every state's been affected majorly. So it's a very unfortunate situation. So now studios won't be able to go back to work until local governments lift the bans on the gatherings of more than 10 people, a number that most sets routinely eclipse. So the first films to resume production are likely the ones that will be shooting in the U.S. The prospect of filming overseas presents too many logistical challenges given the global nature of COVID-19. So some of the movies that are being expected right now that are going to be stuck is this. Accommodating talent that have lined up other productions in the coming months. Because remember, because of these delays, a lot of different movies, who knows if they're going to get the schedulings back into gear. For instance, Chris Pratt is scheduled to star in another Jurassic World movie, Dominion. Dwayne Johnson and Ryan Reynolds are starring in a movie called Red Notice. You also have other movies that were in pre-production that haven't started filming yet. You had Uncharted, Disney's Peter Pan and Wendy. And the biggest film in pre-production was Marvel's Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, the follow-up to the original. Pre-production has continued remotely on the superhero film, and sources say it's still on track to start shooting in June. Mission Impossible 7 was scheduled to start in Venice. Filming was pushed back after Italy was hit hard by the coronavirus and is set to unspool in the European country, making it difficult for production to move shooting elsewhere. Other major moves, The Matrix 4 finished shooting in San Fran, was about to begin production in Berlin. The Batman had completed nearly 7 weeks of filming in London. Red Notice had been in the works for 2 months in Atlanta. These films might make it back to the original release dates, although it is most likely they will be moved back. And that's where we are right now. And as of closures, again, when you look at all the cinemas that are closed down, so many that are all closed up. Tens of thousands of screens, thousands of theaters. It's very unfortunate. So with that said, we're looking into what's going on with the cinemas. Well, the theaters are starting to go ahead and take a hit. They are starting to furlough during this crisis. So here's the story. The big three exhibitors are now dealing with atrocious times and varying degrees of severity. Regal, of the three chains, having to shut down 542 theaters in 42 states on March 17th. They're furloughing 24,000 of its 25,000 employees, including both cinema staffers and corporate film buyers. Regal staffers received no pay and 1 month of COBRA, with sources painting a similar scenario to what happened with their parent company, Cineworld, and its handling of the UK staff, in which those with less than 18 months of service receiving no pay, 3 years of service landing 40% of their pay. There's a petition out there by change.org that demands Regal pay its employees during the crisis. The chain letting them go was without disaster relief pay, which is specifically outlined in their employee manuals. So far, 8,500 signatures for this petition. Now, what they are doing, at least I can give a little bit of benefit of the doubt. Regal is now partnering with grocery store chain Albertsons, which used to be here in South Florida, but it's gone. It's looking to hire 30,000 employees nationwide. The chain will be reportedly be waiving the interview process for furloughed Regal employees so as to make the swift hires for all applicants. In addition, Regal, like many other exhibitors, continues to work with the National Association of Theater Owners to lobby Congress that they're included in the federal aid package, or any federal aid package for that matter. They're also working on other financial aid opportunities for their furloughed employees. Cinemark was far less severe, furloughing hourly theater employees at 345 locations, but not corporate. Returning employees will have to reapply. And they receive 2 weeks' pay as opposed to no pay, use of vacation days, and 1 month of COBRA. AMC Entertainment furloughed 26,000 of its 27,000 employees, and their corporate staff is in limbo. So, with that said, the NATO, National Association of Theater Owners, John Fithian, the boss there, said on Sunday that exhibition will be deemed a distressed industry by the U.S. Department of Treasury. Exhibitors will be able to take part in the $2 trillion stimulus package in regards to loan guarantees from the federal government, enabling movie theaters, both big and small, to survive the economic drought brought on by coronavirus restrictions. So it remains fixed costs and financial obligations during a time when there's no revenue coming in. So they're going to still have to deal with certain cost of just rent and just, regular expenses that they have of some sort. Now they go into the credit deal, which I'm not going to get into so much, but there's that problem. So again, if things can come back within another month, then some of these places can survive and maybe some employees can go ahead and get themselves rehired once again, something like that. At the moment, China has reopened a portion of its cinemas, but people are still hesitant to leave their house because of the coronavirus shutdown. After 60 days of closures, more than 500 cinemas, 5% of China's total, reopened, and they earned a total of $10,000 U.S. Not even as much as a single average cinema might typically earn in a single day. And there you go. Now, reopened cinemas were located in sparsely populated and largely rural Xinjiang, but accounted for 80%. This proportionally accounted for more than 80% of the nationwide box office they went to places where the coronavirus was not as, prominent, and they said, well, open the theaters back up, but they're not going to make much money when there's not many people there. Yeah. So that's the story there with that. Now, what are the companies doing right now? How are they being affected by what's going on here? Let's talk about that. Vox.com reports about this. Peter Kafka wrote a story saying that the pandemic is driving media consumption way up, but ad sales are falling apart. So now, here's some of the things when it comes to media consumption. Twitter daily usage is up 23% this year. company revenue has dropped 20%. Now, people are spending much more time with social media, news sites, and TV networks, but the spikes in traffic and usage are not going to help if advertisers are not paying to reach those people. So the problem is that some advertisers don't have anything relevant for that audience that's coming back to watch content, and it's probably not enough time for them to produce content to get it up and buy time for whatever it might be. So New York Times is also doing a lot with their ad business because they said they gave out their own warning earlier this month. Ad revenue was going to drop into the mid-teens in the first 3 months of the year, though its subscription business seemed okay. Alphabet has not made any predictions about what their predictions are going to be coming up for Wall Street coming up the next quarter. Facebook noted many of its services, including messaging, are seeing increased engagement, but it's under ad pressure too. Quote, we don't monetize many of the services when we're seeing increased engagement. We've seen a weakening in our ads business in countries taking aggressive actions to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Now, companies that are suffering, but then there are some companies that are trying to give back in this time of need. So here's what's going on. There are companies that are trying to do stuff here. Microsoft is announcing they will keep paying the hourly workers who support their campus. Google has established a COVID-19 fund, enabling all temporary staff and vendors globally to take paid sick leave if they have potential symptoms, or can't come into work because they're quarantined. And they've made their video conference series, Hangouts Meet, available for all G Suite customers until July 1st, 2020. Mark Cuban has announced that none of his employees, including those that work for the Mavericks, will be reimbursed for any lunch or coffee purchases for local, independent small businesses. Forbes is hosting a free digital summit under the theme of Business Resilience, Thriving in Crucial Times. Speaker roster will include top experts Chris Brogan, Rohit Bhargava, and Dory Clark. And some of those speakers were supposed to be at South by Southwest this year, which was one of the early casualties of the year. LinkedIn is opening up 16 of its learning courses for free. Tips on how to stay productive, build relationships when you're not face-to-face, use virtual meeting tools, and balance family and work dynamics in a healthy way. Moving along, Amazon hiring 100,000 more workers, giving raises to current staff to deal with demands. Apple offering its retail staff unlimited paid sick leave to anyone experiencing symptoms. Also, Amazon creating a $25 million fund to help its delivery drivers and seasonal workers cope with coronavirus. $5 million fund for those that are to help affected small businesses in Seattle. Among the major telecoms, Comcast, Charter, Verizon, Google, T-Mobile, and Sprint signing a pledge to keep Americans connected for the next 60 days to the internet, even if people cannot afford to pay. Disney has closed its parks and cruises. They promised to continue paying their employees during the closure, giving refunds to all those who had planned on visiting. NBC Universal offering its newest movies, The Hunt and Invisible Man, for affordable rates on demand, as we talked about before. So that's what's going on there. Companies are trying to help out and make something of it. So give some credit there. That's not bad. It's actually kind of interesting. So we see some good out there, which is really nice. Well, actually, I'm going to bring that up in a second. Actually, no, I'll bring it up. Let me get the dirt out of here first before I get to the good stuff. Okay. So let's talk about one of the companies that, of course, will not be doing, so nicely when it comes to the pandemic. iHeartMedia. Yes, they're going to do a charity event. They're going to have that broadcasted live on their stations. That's very nice of them. So they'll do some donations, but, they don't have the kind of money to do anything. But what will this company do right now? Okay. They boosted liquidity by $350 million, withdrawing guidance amid pandemic. So the challenges that COVID-19 has created for advertisers and consumers has impacted iHeart's revenue in the recent weeks, creating a less clear business outlook in the near term. So they have shored up liquidity by $350 million by tapping into a revolving credit facility to boost its financial flexibility. Yep, to stay alive. Yep, another loan or more money they can't afford to do anything with, and they probably can't even pay the interest. But there you go. So Bob Pittman, the chairman and CEO of iHeartMedia, says, while we cannot determine, quote, the full extent of COVID-19's impact on our business at this time. We're monitoring this rapidly evolving situation closely and look forward to discussing our business in greater detail as part of our investors' call for first quarter 2020. On the question of liquidity, he says, quote, to maintain maximum financial... Oh, this is, by the way, this is Rich Bresser, the president and COO that said this on the question of liquidity. To maintain maximum financial flexibility during this period, we have drawn on our $450 million senior secured asset-based revolving credit facility, leaving the additional funds from drawing on our facility in combination with our cash balance gives us a prudent level of liquidity at this time. Yeah. And they have money to go to, and how they get money is amazing. But I don't like this at all either as well. And the one thing is, I'll tell you, for iHeartMedia, if they can't survive this, please sell your stations off. Sell them off. Let's do a fire sale. Take all 840 some odd stations and just sell them off. We do not, you want to take iHeartRadio at the app and make that a company and keep it alone? Then do me a favor, guys. Sell your damn stations out to the rest of the world. Sell them. Let's get this corporate crap out of here. This is a company, iHeartMedia, that chooses that I do not want. I want them to be like a Lehman Brothers back in 2008. Let them fail. And let somebody else take those stations over because they are not doing good by this. If they survive this, of all companies, I mean, it's going to be unfortunate. Yes, all these companies, all these employees are going to get hurt by this. I'm going to see, I guarantee you, more layoffs are going to come now. And more people are going to be let go because they're not going to be able to afford it. You've already put yourself down to the bone. You cannot pick from the bone now. In this situation, sorry, yes, you tried to get your ship back together. You got out of bankruptcy. You're still in debt. And now you're going to have to go ahead and pull for more credit to keep yourself afloat. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. But they're doing this because they're trying to play their stock market price to keep them up. And in the meantime, yes, they have been doing what they need to do because they're trying to keep themselves up and try to keep themselves, in a point where they're not going to go ahead and fall down and lose altogether. So I get what they're doing. I see it. I don't like it, though. But what are you going to do, right? iHeartMedia is going to continue to do what they're going to do. It's what they do. They've had a rough time of it. Can we just tell you, the last 6 months, they did have a stock price that got up as high as $18. They almost got to $18, $17.88 as of February 20th. And that was when Liberty Media was being considered to buy this company out. And they have taken a free fall since. They went down. I mean, before the real magic happened, they were at $14.96 February 27th, and then the coronavirus comes through and just drop. From $18, they're down to $7.51 right now. They did drop to a low of $6.38 at the lowest March 18th. So at the moment, they've got a little bit of progress with it, but still, this company, you want to go and keep certain things around, keep Live Nation, iHeartRadio, keep that around, but you know what? Leave your stations out. Sell them off. And just, stick with your podcasts. And, just make sure to keep your deals with the stations that you have and just find another way to get other stations on. Whatever you're going to do. But honestly, they want to stay around, sell your stock. Sell your stations. Let the local people get them again. Let them have it. That's enough. Really enough. Okay. Moving along. One non-related coronavirus story. How about that? Let's go and talk about that. Rolling Stone put an interesting story out. You produced a hit. Good luck getting paid. The music industry moves fast and it often leaves young producers broke even when their songs rule the airways. So this story from Elias Light. Let's talk about it. So he makes mention, first of all, about Drake's In My Things, which was the number one song. Number one hit in this country back in July 16, 2018. Here's the thing. So as the number one song, In My Feelings, the producers that had this song, what a big money, but the royalties came in slowly, according to one industry source. Several $1 million in writing income and royalties owed to Trap Money Benny and Blank and Mild. The producers of In My Feelings did not start flowing in until December of last year, nearly 18 months after the track set streaming records. And it's nothing to do about Drake, but it has a lot to do with the Byzantine system that governs how producers are paid. They typically rely on multiple streams of income to make a living, and ensuring that each arrives promptly, if at all, requires navigating a logistical minefield. Brandra Ringo, senior director of A&R at Warner Chappell Music, says that the reality is, quote, most producers are broke when they have hit records on the radio if it's their first or second, end quote. So they're trying to talk about maybe there's some things you can do where you can get a union, and producers have talked about that for a long time. Hitmaker, he produced hits from Big Sean and Meek Mill, discussed payment issues on social media. Quote, if we take back our power, don't allow producers to be treated this way, I think we can solve this issue in a very timely manner. It's just another digital disruption. We should keep an eye on this. Much like the content creators in the movies and television are in the same boat. But the only difference is, I mean, people need to go and take a look at what's going on over in that room in Hollywood. Unions have not helped much either because people are still trying to get paid right. So even that is still an issue. So the streaming economy, they're saying that there's a lot more records being released, which means a lot more collaborations, which means a lot more agreements. The load of work for a lot of law firms is too heavy to handle. Producers' clearances get put at the bottom of a growing pile. And one attorney estimates that there are hundreds of millions of dollars that should be in writer-producer bank accounts that are not. So before streaming in the 1990s, music industry moved much more stately. A producer would enter the studio with an artist. Lawyers said he or she was typically advanced a half of a work fee at the start of a process. The other half of the master recording was turned in. Album rollouts ran for months. A publishing executive said that splits. Some producers help to write the songs they work on. Songwriting income is divided up according to who penned what. Were mostly ironed out before a release hit stores. And the producer had that front end to help pay the bills until royalties from production and writing income arrived. There's also a fairly limited number of producers, mostly working in major studios, making it easy to keep track of who did what and when. In a world where a teen can pirate a copy of a production program and make a beat at his dining room table that gets used by a rapper thousands of miles away, making sure that producers get appropriately compensated becomes necessarily more complicated. One president of Par 3 LLC talked about they have producer clients that received a platinum plaque for the amount of records sold before they received a fee. Wow. Business Boy, another producer, getting regular major label placements in 2015, but still didn't have enough income to pay his rent. He had an Eric Bellinger cut, and we were homeless. We were just sleeping in cars, he said. I had placements like, man, I'm really in a car. He used to find a quiet place to park near Universal Studios where he slept mostly undisturbed. The process of getting paid, this is more back to Hitmaker here, says, quote, becomes even more challenging for producers once the music is already released. The artist is all over the country, and taking care of you may not be the highest on the priority list. There's so many things going on that you may get lost in the sauce, especially true in the case of big stars. If a major artist is involved, post-release negotiations over splits are also guaranteed to become more fraught since everyone feels that lots of money is at stake. Jonas G. Berg, who has produced hits for Panic at the Disco and Fifth Harmony, said that, quote, if you negotiated those things before the song was released, you might not know who the artist is on the track, and people would be a lot more fair. But if a big artist releases a song, no one cares if they're an asshole. They're thinking it's real money. I'm going to fight for my percentages. And while people fight, no one can get paid. Then there's the part where original principal source of producer incomes come from royalties, a percentage of the revenue generated from a song or album. But this money stream has a catch. Producers don't start to make royalties until the artist or label makes back the cost of recording plus any advances. There's little transparency about those costs. It's like a cable bill, it sounds like, huh? You don't know what people's budgets are, and there are only a couple of songs I have ever gotten royalties for. Much of getting producers paid seems to involve this kind of nagging. Major labels now rely on third-party accounting systems, says Lucas Keller, president and founder of Milk and Honey Management, which represents 55 songwriters and producers. Quote, we all hate it. I once had an A&R admin tell me they deleted the invoice the first time it comes in. When someone follows up, then they put the invoice into the queue. And creating an account to start to receive one type of income does not help a producer who wants to collect another. And one of the reasons producers get frustrated is that they have no other option other than to keep following up. So Keller mostly refuses to send files unless his producers have received some sort of payment. But not everyone holds out. There's always going to be some kid on cloud cake or at home making beats for the first time that will bend or fold to certain circumstances. Once producers have handed over their beat files and are chasing payment, their last resort is to threaten legal action, but it can sour a creative relationship, and the cost of legal fees may be more than the amount of money a producer is chasing. So for now, a solution remains out of reach, leaving producers, especially young ones, stranded. A high volume of beats is essential to a fast-turning streaming economy, but the music industry neglects the people who provide these crucial building blocks. This is the kind of stuff I talk about on this show, which I want to point this out for people. This is not good. This kind of bullshit that's sad. The music industry, I know, it's a tough ride right now. And again, digital disruption, there's no ultimate answer. There's a lot of corporatization here. And the artists are making money off their live shows, and they're going to also fight for their own royalties because they're not making money off of physical units like albums anymore. And that's the biggest problem. No, it's really unfortunate. It's too bad. All right. Interview time right now on the Broadcasters Podcast. Again, I am joined by Jared Easley. He is co-founder and head of community and content at Podcast Movement. And I start my conversation with him right now here on the Broadcasters Podcast. Enjoy. And joining me on the Broadcasters Podcast is Jared Easley. He's a genuine entrepreneur. I'm going to the bio here. He's been called the Zig Ziglar of the podcasting world. That's a Boogie Nights reference. If those of you, if you think we're all boomers and don't know what that is, go look the movie up. It's a good movie, okay? Mark Wahlberg, come on. Burt Reynolds, come on. I know that's a real boomer reference. Anyways, yep. Past couple of years, he started a podcast, written a book, and co-founded Podcast Movement, which is the world's largest international podcasting-only conference. He's a noticer, motivator, friend, and power content creator. I know you did a lot of the podcast, Jared, so I'm pretty sure you like the fact that bio gets read over and over again. So Jared Easley, co-founder and head of community content of Podcast Movement, thanks for joining me on the Broadcasters Podcast.
Jorge, this is long overdue, so I'm just grateful that you even thought of me. So I'm thrilled to be here.
The thing was, it just kind of was like, I mean, first of all, we are recording this in the middle of a confinement of the coronavirus. So the thing is, I have time. I need things to do. I cannot be stuck here at home and just twiddling my thumbs. I can't do Netflix and chill. I don't know how anybody does it. I want to be the person that's always creating content for things like that. I want to be the entertainer, not the entertained. I don't know why, but that's what it's always felt like. I like behind the scenes, behind the mic, behind the camera. That's my deal because I get more enjoyment out of that. Now, with you, go ahead, Jared.
I want to talk about that for a second. 2005, that's 15 years of podcasting. That is, for people that have podcasts, that's like super, super old school. Like you're the super OG podcaster. So I hope people appreciate that.
So just for those who know, before we got on the air, I made mention of the fact that I started in 2005 when podcasting wasn't even a name yet. And we were calling it audio archiving. And the iPod hadn't been invented yet. And it was fun. The thing was, I needed a release from radio. Because radio, corporate radio, I was not iHeart now, but it was Clear Channel back in the day, becomes iHeart. And I knew I was going to be there for long because the way the environment was, the morale, the people are so great behind the scenes, but management just, and listen, I have I'm going to talk about Bob Pittman a little bit. And I mean, listen, I don't hold back, but I don't discredit what he's done. But in his situation, you know, I've always been contentious about what he could be doing better. But I'll talk about that in a little bit. But my thing is, when it comes to this right here, podcasting for me, it's like this is the new place now for opportunities to be done because digital media will get a rise in an unfortunate crisis. Very unfortunate. So let me go ahead and start off with an article from Out There, Colorado. They recently wrote this, quote, with COVID-19 putting a bit more space between us than usual, you may be feeling a bit lonely. My recommendation is to pass the time. Podcasts, he says. Podcasts range from strictly educational to purely entertainment and everything in between, often feeling more like listening to an old friend than an aging recording. His first recommendation, this writer, says that you think of a topic that you enjoy and search for a podcast on that. With thousands available for free, you're bound to find something on nearly anything. Thanks for promoting there's a great PSC for podcasting. Yay. So, Jared, how do you look at the advantage that podcasting has now to this kind of a situation?
Well, even before the COVID-19 coronavirus quarantining and all that, podcast was just steadily growing, especially from a listening standpoint. So this last week, Edison Research put out the Infinite Dial 2020, and is a webinar. It's available for anybody to access. We can put that in the show notes there. But basically, it was talking about how in the U.S. population, then this is just U.S. people that they surveyed, 155 million people have listened to a podcast. And then in the last month, 37% have listened to a podcast. 24% of those have listened to a podcast in the last week. Of the ages between 12 and 34, 49% of those are monthly podcast listeners. And then weekly podcast listeners average about 6 podcasts per week. So that's even before all of this downtime that you're describing.
Well, let me go ahead and follow up on the Infinite Dial survey. So, again, podcasts now listened to by over 100 million Americans a month.
Yep.
And it continues to head towards gender parity, increased use of smart speakers. The growth is in this for audio. And the thing is, people need to understand there's a reason why podcasting, when you're able to go, it's so portable, it's so easy. And, you know, it's also, you know, the way the model is for advertising for many stations or for many shows, it's so much different. It's just like, you know, it's, again, almost like a Kickstarter crowdfunding type model for most people, unless they get some kind of an advertising, but then you're an affiliate marketer. You know, make a little bit of revenue off of promoting somebody else's product, which is a great thing. And the research also shows that a third of Americans now, of all Americans, no longer have an AM/FM radio. Oops. Looks like they only got in their cars. What do you think about the continued growth? Here's my question. I guess after all this time, you know, have we seen a peak of the audience yet, or is there still room for growth?
Oh, no, there's definitely still room for growth. And I think, if anything, we just scratched the surface. Now, I believe as more people become, I'm still having conversations with people. I'm sure you do as well, Jorge, where I talk to somebody and I bring up podcasting, and it's becoming less and less where people are like, what's a podcast? I've noticed that over the last several years. Less people say what's a podcast, but people still say what's a podcast. So there's a lot of people that still don't even fully wrap their minds around what podcasting is, or that they can access it on their mobile device for free and have this abundance of content that you described earlier just at their fingertips. So I think it has a lot more room to grow. And maybe a situation like we're in right now, as unfortunate as it is, could be one of the catalysts for allowing more people to discover podcasts and more people getting into it, because they just didn't make the time in the past, where now they have a little more time and they're looking for things to fill it with.
Now, I think part of the thing, too, that also takes into account, and I think maybe, you know, you let me know what you think about this. I think the technology has not caught up to the amount of content that's out there and making it very easy to find. The Apple Podcast obviously is the grail, because everything is up there. Everybody knows you need to put your podcast up there. But my thing is, I don't know if it's the best searchable. I don't know if it's the easiest to go ahead and navigate around. Spotify's jumped into the game very big time, and they've done a very good job with it. And iHeartMedia to another extent, but I think nobody's gotten it really simple to make it easy to navigate. It has made the perfect podcast app to listen to podcast on, or to be able to shuffle, or be able to have it perfect. I think there are good features on different products, like Google Podcast, for one. I actually really enjoy when they have the little silencing feature where if you want to go and cut out gaps in between, that's not a bad thing. There's things where, it's there, but I just think that would be the other thing that will also help in the growth, is that we need to continue to see the updating of all the technology that plays these podcasts for us.
Yeah. And you're going to see that, Jorge, there's no question, because the more people, the more money that podcasting makes in general, the more revenue that's coming in overall for podcasting is going to attract more people. People are going to see this and they are going to be like, hey, we now understand these pain points that you're talking about. And, there's going to be more innovation. But I mean, even now, we have more opportunity than we had even just a few years ago. So it's improved quite a bit. But yeah, we're not quite there yet in terms of all the neat features and the cool things that are needed and that I believe will come in time. But it's still, light years ahead of where you started in 2005. I mean, just the fact that you can just go on your mobile device and with an app, you can find almost anything that you're really wanting to find. I mean, that's pretty good.
So, I mean, when it comes down to it, the kind of podcasters are out there as well, I always think about the fact that, it is a different, there are basically a handful of styles that everybody likes to listen to their programs. Mm-hmm. And, the one thing I will say is I do like a lot of radio people that have found their way into podcasting, because a lot of good talent that when they got let go and they just said, okay, well, I'm going to come to here, if it's a corporate radio model, they just, first of all, I could not stand where the corporate radio types, they said, well, podcasting is becoming a thing a couple of years ago. And I was like, okay, we need to do something about this. Well, let's just put our morning shows up there. We'll just put them in there with commercials and whatever. Maybe put somebody to listen to it. It's like, didn't take it seriously. I'll still go back. I used to listen to Don and Mike. For a while, used to be on Man Talk 640 AM here in Palm Beach here in Florida. And I remember calling in because it was right after Anna Nicole Smith died. And I called them to the show and I was like, I made a mention of something and they got upset because I said something about it. And then they're kind of asking me about like what I do. And I was like, I work in podcasting. And I just remember Don Geronimo saying, oh yeah, it sounds like it's like the same thing as working in McDonald's. At that time, it was just like 2007, I think it was. So yeah, I got shit on for that. I like whatever. But at this point, I don't know if that guy's working anymore. And, I think he did do a podcast for a while. And it's like, see, look what you do. Yeah. Like, you gotta, don't be so boomer about this. Like there is a boomer mentality. I love that word these days. It just works out. But for me, it's like, there's the NPR style, which does get a lot of promise. But then there's Joe Rogan, who's like, he just talks. Yep. There's no script. There's no nothing. He just talks, has a nice little set. It's depending on the guest, it's great. And it just makes
you hit it right there. Depending on the guest. I really, really appreciate Joe Rogan's podcast, but I don't listen to every episode. No. And it's not because he's not great. He's great at what he does. Oh yeah. But it's if I'm interested in the guest, but some of the best podcast episodes I've listened to in the last year have been Joe Rogan's show.
Oh, so, Bill! The last one I heard was Bill Maher, and I was like, okay, ate it up for 2 hours. Like,
absolutely, perfect. Yeah. I will absolutely listen to that one. But then there's been other ones where I've started it, and it's like, as much as I respect Joe Rogan, he has to keep the lights on too. I mean, the guy's, Lord knows what he's making, but he reads ads for like the first several minutes of every show, and of course you and I don't mind that because we appreciate what he does, but. For someone that's new, they're like, in fact, I shared an episode that he did with Bob Lazar. That was a UFO one.
Oh, yeah. That's a coast guy right there. Oh.
Yeah, I shared that with a friend of mine. Her name's Christina. She does not listen to podcasts. She lives in the UK. She's in England.
Yeah.
And I shared that episode with her. And her first comment to me was, how long do I have to listen to these ads? And I kind of chuckled at that because I was like, I'm so numb to it. I don't even think about it. Hey, this is a good show. This is what they do. They read ads for a while because that's they're keeping their lights on or whatever.
Yeah.
But I thought that was kind of funny. Is like, that probably should be feedback for shows. Like, hey, find another way to do your ads. Because the new listener that doesn't know you or doesn't care, Of course, he doesn't really have an interest in those people because he's got millions of others that do. So, but anyway, that's a lesson maybe for the newer podcasters. Like,
but I think one thing for me,
creative with it.
Yeah, but for myself, I don't make a whole lot on this at all, and that's okay. Yeah. I mean, I do a little bit of things here and there, and, if I'm going to plug something, I'll do mention kingofamazon.com. That's, it's Amazon. You just go to it, but go through kingofamazon.com. That's all I'm going to plug. But I don't even plug that too much. I leave it just towards like the beginning or whatever. But like,
you're really smart for doing that. Some podcasters don't even know or think to do that, so that's good.
Well, that was just trying to find a way to put a couple of cents together. But I mean, one thing is that mostly for podcasting, I also don't want to have the mindset that everybody has to come in here thinking, okay, yes, you can market your brand. Yes, you can market who you are, but you're not going to feel like you need to, like, this is like the end all be all of revenue. No, this is a supplemental income. If anything, to me, I mean, the celebrities are able to go and use their celebrity prowess to make something of it, or the brands that are out there that are doing the same thing. God bless you. But, for those that are out there, I would never want to discourage anybody from wanting to be in this, because the best part of podcasting is, honestly, anybody could do it. If you do a little reading up, you can get on here and do the same thing. That's what's great about this.
I agree. And I've been doing my podcast nowhere near as long as yours, but since 2013, which is now, 7 years, and I'm proud of that. And I've not made money from my podcast. I've also realized early on that the gold for me, if you will, was the networking piece. I just really appreciated that. Like, you and I are chatting right now. You and I are friends. Prior to this interview, we've known each other from meetups and things in the South Florida area.
Well, 3 years or so.
For several years. Mm-hmm. More longer than that, actually.
Probably,
but that is a testimony of the podcast space. I think is you and I have that relationship. We have that friendship. If you and I were to bump into each other, we'd be doing elbows, not handshakes right now, but we'd be doing elbows, and we'd be hanging out and catching up, because we're consider ourselves friends. And that's just such an amazing testimony. I think that the power of podcasting is the ability to really create genuine relationships. And I know for a fact that the stuff that we're doing now with the business that I'm in, we wouldn't be where we're at if it wasn't for that dynamic that's kind of unique to audio, and specifically in podcasting.
Yep. So now, as I mentioned before, we went on to the little tangent right there about the fact that the technology that podcast brings now. Apple Podcasts, Cult of Mac reports that they're making it easier for podcasts users to discover new shows focused on the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The app's new coronavirus Stay Informed section now highlights content from CNN, NPR, BBC, and ABC News. Okay. That's fine that you have that, but I will just make this little side point. That's not the only places I go for content, because unfortunately, I'll ask you about this. Because of the fact that we do have the mainstream brands that are trying to leverage podcasting, but the problem is that, we're seeing the polls. People have lost trust because there is no wall between news and opinion / editorial. The who, what, when, where, and why of journalism is basically dead. But I think there are still some good citizen journalists that have podcasts out there that I do listen to that are doing the right thing. When you look at that, what do you think about the fact that, obviously Apple, yes, put the brands out there. There might be some money they're making off of that. What do you think about the fact about where you go for information and, who's coming on board? Because anybody can bring you news that might not be credible. Yeah.
And because now more than ever, especially with what we're going through right now, it's important to to weigh that out. And I don't know that I have the best answer for that, but what I tend to do is I will check out a couple of shows and try to get an idea. Sometimes if it's relevant, I'll even do some independent research on my own to kind of fact check and double check. But yeah, for the most part, I try to, if I see a brand like I'll just throw out like like something like a Fox News or CNN or something like that.
Yep.
I'm probably going to be more likely to say, okay, that's probably somewhat credible. It might be, leaning in a certain political direction,
right,
but it's likely to be more credible than Tom's, daily news or whatever. I don't know Tom.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out a name, but. So for me, that's probably what I would start with doing is I would probably give the brands a chance just because they are a brand for a reason, and they have the name recognition. But I don't always depend solely on that. There's a lady out in California that does a really good daily news podcast. That's really short, kind of updates of the news, and it's called The Newsworthy. And I've been listening to that for a while now. And her name is Erica Mandy. And Erica is not massively famous. She's not like super big time podcast star, but she does a daily news podcast. She takes the latest news from the previous day and recaps it. And it's never, she's not spinning it in any particular direction. She's just saying what's going on. And so for that, I trust her because I guess I've just listened to her for so long, and if she's saying it, then I don't really go back and double check it. I just believe that she's curating this, and she's done it for so long now that I just listen to it and I believe it. And maybe shame on me, but she's not giving me a reason to mistrust her, I guess. But there's another podcast where it's called, well, you know what? I won't name the podcast, but it's a true crime podcast. And I really, really liked this particular true crime podcast. And I would listen to it. And then it came out last summer that one of the hosts, there's two, one of the hosts was plagiarizing other sources for the show. And when I found that out, I was, first of all, really disheartened. Wow. Because I thought, well, that's not cool. That's someone else's work. They should get, some kind of credit or, but then I thought about it too. I was like, I still like their show and I do listen to it on occasion, but now in the back of my head, I'm kind of like, okay, where did she get this info? You know what I mean? Yeah. Who'd she rip off for this? Which I hate feeling that way. It doesn't mean that I'm not still entertained by some of the content that they do or that I find it interesting or intriguing, as I do. And I haven't completely abandoned the show, but there is a little stigma with it, and it's because, she was discovered for plagiarism. So, you do what you can. You can't trust everybody, Jorge, as you know, but I think podcasting has enough people that have good intentions, and I think the ones that maybe are misusing that or purpose, their purpose is not with the best intentions. I think you're going to kind of figure that out over time, and then you can kind of make decisions based on that. Yeah, the one I listen to now these days for news, wholeheartedly, Tim Pool. He's more or less, I guess you would say, left of center liberal. But the thing is, it's not even like so much of an objective, any kind of an opinion he has, but he tells a story, explains it quite a bit, and gives like proper context to everything. That's all he's about. But also he's a big thumper against mainstream media because for me, it's like, I think people don't want the Ted Baxter type of news anymore. I don't think people placate to that. I think they just feel it's antiquated, it's contrived, and I just don't know if the people that are there. I just feel like clickbait is the game of the day. I don't feel like people, it's more for marketing. And like, this is where the whole gamut comes in again, where it's like, I'm not looking at for the money. And that's some of the people I like that are doing that. Like, yes, find a way to go and keep my programming going so I can take care of the equipment I need and, keep doing the content that I do so I can keep doing it. So, working almost like a paycheck to paycheck type system. I can appreciate people like that because they're doing the right thing for me and they're giving me good quality, informative content. I think that just does more for me than anything else. And, that's where and I don't want to hamper on it. But the thing is, I was in journalism. I studied journalism and I can't stand what we're getting to right now. I would be told, for me, it's totally fine to have a political opinion. Jesus Christ, that's fine. But, that shouldn't be so much a focus right now. And then the other thing too is I would prefer that we don't have to, that we could just have a good, clear identifying of what the news is, of who's out there. There's a reason the news was like it was for many years, and we respect so many different anchors and journalists and the type. And, for me, I'll respect certain journalists that are good investigative reporters. It's something that's lacking right now, and that doesn't get done enough. When you talk about true crime, I think of what's that show from NPR they were doing? The one that's not Scandal. What's the name of it? Serial. See, that good investigative, I like that right there. And like, that's the kind of thing, like when it's good, it's informative, explains everything. And I don't think there was any kind of a spin they were trying to make. I just think they told the story because it was a good story. Yeah. And,
that's the kind of thing I look forward to. The other one I was thinking from Spotify, I forget the name of it now, but there was one, Mogul, which is also a very good podcast. And I just happened to catch it because they talk about the Miami hip hop scene through Live Crew and the whole story of free speech and censorship. Cool. Fantastic episodes there. That kind of stuff will get me. But across the board, I think it's also when they talk about, you find whatever genre of podcast you want, you take your pick. I just don't listen to a lot of the general stuff because I'm a big wrestling guy. I host my own wrestling podcast. And honestly, wrestling must encompass at least about 20% of all podcasts. I cannot believe how many people are out there doing it. Lots of fans. And I love the interaction. I like people doing it. But, it's like, I just want more podcasters out there to be themselves. Don't create some kind of a thing like you got to act like you got to have some kind of an inflection or whatever you're doing. Just talk. That's all I want to do. Just talk. We like different voices here. That's the whole point.
I'm curious what you think about wrestling in the sense of them doing shows now. When I say them, I'm talking about like the WWE or AEW. They're doing shows basically with no fans. Because they have these contracts, these TV contracts and stuff, or they're putting out pay-per-views or whatever. And there's no fans that can come to the arenas because of, the coronavirus. But, they're still trying their best to put that out there. Do you find that entertaining? What's your
Absolutely. I'll tell you, you must be a wrestling fan. You called out both companies that are very important. I watch a lot of different wrestling, different organizations. What has happened in the last 2 weeks with WWE and AEW doing programming like they have. Listen, they're trying to fulfill the sports component that people are missing. I give them credit. First of all, Vince McMahon is a stubborn mule. It doesn't matter. He's going to try to keep making the money coming in. He's losing money in the XFL because he had to suspend the season. For him, they had the facilities. Yeah. Here's the thing. Because they're sports franchises or they're sports entertainment companies that have their own venues where they can continue shooting content. So as they can do that, they can make sure they can properly screen the wrestlers. They're able to do what they need to do. That's fine. WWE has not done a great job of doing the live with no audience component. I think AEW this past week with their Dynamite show did a fantastic job. I think, it's the ambiance. It's the way you do things in the background. You have a lot of things going on. And I would wish the problem is WWE is making so much money right now. They have to serve at the behest of their broadcast partners. They're making $250 million a year off of USA and Fox Television. They have to fill those contracts. Yeah. Like they can't go back and put out archive content at the moment. They have to do what they have to do, and it's proof positive because the ratings are up for all those shows. Because they need something else that's live and interesting content. And if they can keep going without getting shut down, might as well. I mean, WWE has their performance center. It's their venue. They have all the production on site. They can do a good show. They produce a great show every week. Their content's not great. And they need to work on that. And they're going to keep WrestleMania going. They're going to do it over 2 nights. They're going to keep trying to go chugging along. And I can't blame them for that. If they could keep making money, God bless them. Do what you got to do. And that's fine. What else is there that gives that kind of, competitive component? I mean, does everybody want to watch movies or sad news all day? Like if there's other escapes of anything, we might as well. And honestly, I like the fact I talk about it every week where I could talk about what they're doing. And honestly, I set it up on my podcast this past Wednesday. I'm grading it on a curve. Listen, they're under inordinate circumstances. I'm glad they're doing what they're doing. I'm grateful they're doing what they're doing. That's where I'm coming from.
Well, I am not as big of a wrestling fan as you, but I do appreciate it. And I did see, Dynamite that you were talking about and how they introduced Matt Hardy at the end, even without an audience, was very compelling. And it's really creative. And you're right. I hope WWE can kind of take notes because I think AEW is kind of doing it a little bit better. Plus, they had some, staff or other wrestlers that were in the vicinity of the ring, so it didn't feel as empty as you'll see in a WWE pay-per-view. So.
Right. And the thing was, it's a little inside baseball. So you know that they introduced a couple new characters into their product. And the fact that, you have certain characters you had the bad guys on one side of the arena and the good guys on the other side. The bad guys are betting on matches and talking crap. And they just did a better job of entertaining where you're completely distracted from the fact there's no audience, no crowd reactions of anything. They just did a better job is what they did. They just know what they're doing better because it's just fresh minds doing better stuff. But again, it's where podcasting is a great dynamic. Let's get back to that. Podcasting is the same way. There's the way you do it where WWE does things and the way that AEW does it. It's grassroots versus corporate. And, you can work in both ways, but there has to be some creativity that goes into like an NPR style show or a show that iHeartRadio does, Ron Burgundy, whatever it is. Okay, you can do shows where, all right, you're just making up something. Let's just take the Anchorman role. We'll just roll it out into a show. Yeah, you got 1 million people listening to it. Good for you. But yeah, you're just doing that. And, Will Ferrell does the voice. Okay. It's like, if it works for you, I don't think it's very creative myself, but hey, God bless him for doing it.
I've listened to some Ron Burgundy. I've been entertained. I think I like the Conan Needs a Friend show a little bit better. That makes me laugh more. But I think it's interesting to see people that are Hollywood celebrities and getting into podcasting and finding that they really enjoy it and that it is something that was a quote Conan said recently, as recent as I believe February. He said that some of his most meaningful work has been recently in this podcast. It's like he looks back on his career and some of the most meaningful stuff he's found in doing the podcast. And I think that's wow. Why is that?
Wow.
That's an interesting thing for someone of his status to say. And he's not the only one that's made comments like that. So I think, that's testimony of podcasting. There's more opportunity there. You're likely going to see more people like those names jumping in and now all of a sudden the cool kids are doing it. So it's okay.
But it's not contrived and it's stripped down. Yeah. Like a Conan, he has no problem stripping himself down and making himself I'll tell you, for him, I remember when he was leaving NBC to go to TBS and just the way he was, it just didn't give a shit. And just, it was funnier that way. I think when he's not having to go and play to the bosses, he can just play like he wants to play. I think he's great. I think he's very funny. And I'll tell you, I'm wondering what he's going to do. I read he's coming back on March 30th to do new shows. He's going to do it from home and everything's going to be remote. I'm going to probably tune in to find out how that is because I'm curious how he does that. That's pretty creative. At least the guy's daring to do it. I saw Andy Cohen's going to come back and do his show and hey man, God bless him. Do it. Let's. Yeah. I'm curious what the programming comes up, how creative we get. Because honestly, podcasting is just another section of how entertainment and how we watch television and listen to radio or listen to audio, it's going to change because of this. We know society is going to change as a result. I think our viewing and listening habits are absolutely going to change because of this.
Like you and I right now, we're recording this podcast, but I'm in my house. You're in your house. We're using a tool called Zoom to record this. And how cool is that we're in that era of technology where we can just make a podcast sitting in each other's. I'm in my house, you're in your house. So and you could be interviewing someone across the world and doing the same thing.
Absolutely. Oh no, I love it. It's been so great. No, on this show, I've gotten people talk to people from different areas, different walks of life. It's just nice to do, and honestly, makes it easier. You don't have to get set up with makeup. You don't have to go get on a set. You just wherever you are, wherever you want to do it. I mean, it's just gotten so easy. Now, okay, so let's move along here. I'm not, I'm going to focus. I'll get off the COVID-19 stuff because, I got another question about that. I'll just make a point about this, but they're talking about that. There are a lot of different coronavirus focused series that have also emerged. Yeah. And, you got CNN's Coronavirus, Fact versus Fiction, Ride Home Media's Coronavirus Daily Briefing, charting well in Apple Podcasts. And so, it's really great about that. And also, Google Trends shows us the demand for podcasts about coronavirus. It's gotten a sharp rise in coronavirus-related episodes, showing podcasters' response to that demand. So there you go. Now, another thing I want to ask about is, you have also, not only with the Podcasters Meetup and, doing a lot of work for Podcasters Movement, there's also the community aspect, because what you're doing with Podcasters Movement, it was, an increase of what you're doing when you did a Podcasters meetup here in South Florida. The fact of the matter is you were bringing people together, and there was an online community that would know, okay, we're going to engage at this venue on this day every month. Or if not, you had people that were encouraging to learn more about their podcast. What are you doing with your podcast? And really creating a great community. And now you spoke back in 2015 about Facebook groups and how to nurture a community on Facebook. So now we're in this age of coronavirus and confinement. I've been reading now stories about everything from, new Facebook groups to a lot more social media engagement with people that might not even know each other or just friends to keep in touch. Online dating is completely changing now, so people are doing much more virtual dating than ever. The question is, do you see any avenues in this coronavirus confinement where online communities are going to be much more prominent? Do you think we're going to see a lot more communities really engaged and very active?
Yeah, I think everything you've just said points to that, and we're seeing the same thing. We have a Facebook group that has just grown organically very rapidly over just a few years, and it's now over 31,000 members of people that are interested in podcasting or that podcast. And yeah, we kind of chuckle about it now, because when we first started this thing, we thought, wouldn't it be amazing to have a group with 2,000 members? And now you fast forward to where we are, and somebody will come in and ask a simple question like, if I want to record a podcast remotely like we're doing with a guest, what are the best tools to do that? And they'll potentially get 100+ answers of people saying, well, here's what I use and here's how I do it. So it's become like this really, like you said, community. It's a great place. It's a safe place for people to come in and ask questions or share their opinion on things. And that's how I think podcasting overall begins to be more innovative and more creative is one of the last podcast movements we did was in Orlando. That was last 2019 in the summer. And one of the ladies that I talked to has a podcast about bird watching, and it kind of cracks me up. I asked her, what was one of the sessions that you went to where you found something that was really helpful to you? And her answer made me laugh. She's like, "Oh, the without a question, the podcast, the session that I went to that I learned the most from was from the wrestling guys." And not to get back onto wrestling, but and that kind of made me laugh. It was like, well, how many places are you finding the bird watching lady connecting with the wrestler guys and learning from each other? Like that just probably isn't happening that often in other spaces, but in podcasting that's becoming true is people that are in completely different niches and different categories are saying, well, how is this person doing it? And what is successful? What kind of formula does this show have that builds that community, that creates more interest from listeners? And they're learning from each other. And it's just like you said, it's creating more community because people are saying this is a good place to be. This is a collaborative spirit. It's a synergistic opportunity. And when they feel that and they sense that, they're diving in and they're learning and they're getting better and they're becoming. I would think the learning curve is getting smaller. Is probably a good way to say it. People are getting answers from a lot of different opinions and then being able to hopefully implement that into their own show. And so that is what we're seeing in our community. We're seeing just a lot more people interacting. Our engagement on other social media channels like Twitter and Instagram is amazing. Just on LinkedIn, I have a habit of just sharing kind of some of the most recent podcasting articles and things that have come out about podcasting. And my personal engagement for my LinkedIn, which I've never really put too much time into, has probably tripled, in the last couple of months. Just because people are interested in podcasting, and I'm not doing anything other than just sharing. Okay, here's an article that somebody wrote why Spotify is doing it this way, or here's an article about marketing your podcast, and I share things like that, and then people are commenting, people are engaging with me, and I that wasn't even happening, several months ago. I would just post something, I might get a couple of likes, no big deal, and I didn't really care because it was LinkedIn. I don't really focus too heavily on LinkedIn, but I am now because there's a lot more people that are interested. So it is. I think without a doubt, people are wanting community. They're wanting to find people they trust. They want to find people they can learn from, especially if they're in the podcasting space, and they can continue to be innovative. And that's one of the best ways to be innovative is to get ideas and kind of make them your own, by learning from other people that have done it longer than you, such as Jorge.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But I'll tell you one thing. It was really hard at the beginning for me to, getting back to the groups. There's something to be said about, yes, the wrestling community, the gaming community, the people that are really into, genre movies or anime. It's the younger millennials or, maybe, late Gen Zers, the older Gen Zers that are really engaged into the space. I mean, for me, I can't tell you how many people on YouTube especially I listen to that are really they're just younger than I am, way younger, but their content's so good and the way they present themselves just haven't moved themselves to podcast yet. Or they do a podcast version of what they do and they also do a video. And I just figured, I'll do that as well. I've started doing some video stuff, not all of it, just like I still have my podcasts that are set alone. But then I have one I call When I'm Not Podcasting, and that's just an umbrella so that if there's certain things I want to talk about that's outside of my normal content, and do that. But I also want to learn from other people. And, there's Reddit you could go to, there's Twitter, there's a lot of spots where you could just go and follow different things. I just don't know where we're going to go there. And I'm wondering what's going to be more engaging to others than anything else. And that's really what I want to find out. Next week, I will conclude my conversation with Jared Eastley here on the Broadcasters Podcast. By the way, if you are so inclined, please do consider to help me out during this time because some of my revenue streams are shut down because I can't get out of the house. I am promoting a little bit more kingofamazon.com, which is the one way if you just shop for Amazon, just go to that affiliate link of mine, kingofamazon.com, so that I can make some commission off of any sales that are a result of people going to that website. Kingofamazon.com is buying from Amazon like you normally do. I hope you'll consider it. Kingofamazon.com. Kingofamazon.com. Go ahead and shop there, please. And if you want to donate, I have a PayPal and a Cash App. You can look for that at broadcasterspodcast.com. Until next week, content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast, presented by broadcasterspodcast.com and kingofpodcasts.com. The Broadcasters Podcast is brought to you by kingofpodcasts.com/Amazon. If Amazon is good enough for the King of Podcasts, it most certainly is good for you. kingofpodcasts.com/Amazon. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program. The Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at kingofpodcasts.com.